Now, while many in the city, it's a little unclear as far as morality is concerned. With the one in charge of this fixer office, the morality is quite clear. Next we have the Kane office. This fixer office is a notary or contract office. They deal in writing up contracts and checking the terms of them to minimize the risk of one or more parties being cheated. So they're likely to be affiliated with the Ruina Association, as that's their field. They're basically glorified lawyers. Although they have something more substantial to deal with disputes than red tape, as not all disputes can be resolved diplomatically. Some of them require more violent means of resolving them. The Gaze office had some connections with them, as they were provided a listening device by the Kane office to find out what W Corp's singularity was by tracking the Mola office fixers. Well, we know what happened to both, don't we? Each of the Kane office fixers has cybernetic augmentations, those more advanced than anything previously covered, although one more so than others. One of them even has bionic weapons, although more sophisticated than what Tayin of the Hook office had. This is another charge-based guest group, although they're focused more on taking the beating and then dishing it out. They also have some limited force field capability. Yeah, force fields exist in that world. As for this fixer office itself, first we have Nemo, the greedy that is the president of the Kane office. It's like he was one who had a full body replacement, considering that his head is basically a vertical screen that he uses to express his emotions. This money-grubbing version of Arnim Zola has a high-quality body, and one of the features of it is an energy beam weapon. Hang on, is that legal? Well, unless it's no more powerful than the best kinetic projectile weapon available. I'm not sure if it is. Then again, it does need charging up in order to be used. So it's probably a last resort weapon. He loves nothing more than to cheat others of money, if he's sure that he can get away with it, although the same can't be said about those under his employ. In fact, I would compare him to a twisted version of Phoenix Wright, except when he says, "Take that," it won't just be a psychological strike on his opponent. It'll be something more substantial. As for his perspective, apparently wings are destined to fall behind the market occasionally, if they don't respond to patent disputes effectively, so that singularities can be used legally. I mean, it doesn't matter what size the dispute is, If they don't deal with it quickly enough, this can result in a patent war, which are quite important in the city, as when mega corporations, the Wings included, have this problem, they sue each other for patent infringements. This is quite serious, as if a singularity isn't used without ownership of the patent, or worse, stealing the patent, this could attract the attention of some rather violent tax collectors, if it turned out to be true. And believe me, Kali, the Red Mist, was all too familiar with 2 of those before she died. Nemo understands that a notary office's role is to involve itself in this patent war without fear of getting caught in the crossfire. And that can sometimes be literal, but not always. They can even benefit from it. Yeah, technologies need to be patented separately for areas outside of the nest or other domain under a Wing's jurisdiction, without admitting to infringement before carefully reviewing the lawsuit, to protect the rights to the technology. It's also best to not publicize the details before the patent was registered. It'd probably take around a day and a half to list all the reasons why patent wars break out. Yeah, it's that long. Next we have Martina. Now, she might look like a malevolent wraith from a horror movie series of Japanese origin, but she's a fixer, one with tendrils coming out of her arms and her briefcase. It's unclear what other augmentations she has, but those bionic weapons are the more visibly obvious. She uses them to whip her enemies in order to shock them into submission. Yeah, in this case, she delivers the hentai, not receives it. Now, while I compared Bono of the Gaze Office to Dr. Octopus, Martina would seem to be close to Venom. Although she's more monotone in her speech and dresses like an adult Wednesday Addams, she has some social skills, along with enjoying herself too much with her signature move. Under rare circumstances. Well, it's not typical behavior of her. She really needs to be pushed to express that. Now, if Nemo is a twisted Phoenix Wright, she's basically a twisted Athena Sykes. She understood what notarization was, which was the process of drafting documents to officially certify a deal between 2 offices or other parties in case things happened. A notarial act is powerful, something that can verify the facts and secure executory force. In simple terms, both sides need to keep their side of the contract, otherwise the contract can be enforced on them. It needs to be made clear who's to blame under these circumstances, to stop unnecessary disputes from occurring. This is what notary or contract offices, like the Kane office, assist with. The city is divided into domains, much as associations organizations, like the Zwei Association, set territories for their role as peacekeepers. Different parts of each district, largely in the back streets. Although it's not required to use a notary office, it's not as expensive as going through into other domains. It's also quicker. It's also the case that the service of each notary office has varied levels of professionalism, likely based on how much they cost, which likely varies from office to office. Yeah, if there's a gap in the market, it'll be filled, regardless of the service that's offered. Finally, we have Bada. Now, according to a Project Moon Q&A, he's the younger brother of San, the operator of the streetlight office. They appear to both have a strained relationship with each other, based on San not wanting to speak of him when asked about him. In regards for help with retrieving Mars and Lulu's books, he was apparently more successful than San, considering that he was working for a Star of the City level fixer office. He's had some significant augmentations on him, such as power fists that augment his powerful blows and fighting moves that would make any spandex-wearing American wrestler themselves. Even his heart has had some augmentations done to it. I'll be getting to that later, don't worry. It's uncertain what else has been augmented, but it's likely to be something that aids in his ability to fight back. He's also the most offensive of this group. As for him, he's relatively normal in personality, at least compared to the other two. He's basically a slightly twisted version of Apollo Justice. He knows that contracts should be signed on equal terms with mutual agreements with all parties involved. There are boundaries that minimize the betrayal of trust due to a need of coexistence. These are abstract principles that are intended to prevent schemes from being devised to cheat the other, to make sure that each party gets what they agree to in the contract. This is necessary, as the head's rules don't cover everything. The story picks up in the Kane office itself, where Bada asked President Nemo about the request from T-Corp. Nemo saw it as a difficult situation. Martina asked if they've been found out. Doesn't look that way, considering that Nemo isn't that bothered. In fact, he criticizes W Corp's carelessness, leaking its singularity so carelessly, likely referring to the warp cleanup crew being turned into books. Bada said that everything went as the Blue Reverberation said in the end. Oh, that's not good, as we know how a deal with him usually goes. Thelma certainly did, as he was slowly eaten alive. Yeah, the former director of She Association Section 1. Nemo saw this as the perfect opportunity to learn the details of W Corp's singularity. Nemo, if you could vomit right now, you'd rush to the nearest waste receptacle if you found out what it was that W Corp's singularity truly was. All that they need to do is visit the library with the invitation and get the books of W Corp's cleanup crew. Yeah, that invitation might as well say, "This is valuable information. Come and get it!" if you can. Martina mentioned that the library was a starveless city at that point. They've dealt with 11 requests of that threat level. It's why they're directly sponsored by T-Corp. Yeah, they're time manipulators. Examples of their handiwork include the TT2 protocol used in the facility and that time-stopping box that kept everyone from dying in the warp train. Bada asks what they're going to do with the confidential information of W Corp's singularity. Well, it's not to return it to W Corp. Not for free, anyway. Nemo wanted to sell it to clients that needed the technology in order to start a patent war. Well, patent war, however you want to say it, that's what he intends for it. Yeah, he didn't want to hand it to T-Corp right away. Nemo then explained to Bada that it takes more than just diligent work to rise through the ranks, as their office has. It's about always seeking opportunities. Mentioning the gaze office, that he entrusted work to that irrelevant rubbish. I mean, he thought it as a joke at the time, but it led to opportunities for them. As he was about to go on about that, they had visitors. Argalia, the Blue Reverberation, and Pluto, yesterday's promise. The former telling Squarey Head that it went just as he predicted. It was also not the first time that Pluto has met them, although unlike Argalia, he greeted President Nemo more formally. Nemo was less respectful towards the Ponzi creep and the wing-forsaken skeleton. Have the wings developed a religious aspect to them, seeing as they're being invoked in such a manner? Anyway, he asked, since when did he agree to go there in person? How the two screwed them over, where the Kane office are supposed to go to the library by themselves, including Nemo. Argalia then ridiculed Six-Sided Skull, bragging about him completing 11 Starve the City type requests. And he asked them what was wrong with entering the library personally. Was he scared? And yeah, Bada, he was listening in on your conversation. This worried Martina. And for good reason, considering who was talking to her. Nemo took this more lightly. Yeah, the walls have ears, as do bags. Nemo, you might want to watch what you say. You are talking to a color fixer. Yeah, a fixer that technically outranks you. he answered the blue sicko with, "Yes, I'm scared and less. Thanks for asking," with a less than convincing smile on the screen. Well, if he was capable of emptying his bowels, he'd do that. But it's likely that he no longer has the capacity, due to having his body replaced. Well, he certainly changed his head. Martina noted that Nemo was annoyed, as did Bada, who noted that it would be a trial to calm him down. As for Pluto, he noticed this fear. Nemo asked Mr. Skullcap if he looks like Scrap for Brains. "Well, Nemo, you look like a smaller version of something that you'd see in some urban areas that shows information and ads, but Scrap for Brains? No, you don't look like that." It's because he understands his motive. So he can't not go to Brown Alert upon hearing this, as there was a possibility that he could turn into a book in the library. The library would have books on the singularity of T Corp, along with the books on the singularities of W Corp and L Corp, which they already had. Martina and Bada knew what he was about to say, which was that he was sending Martina and Bada on that suicide mission to get all three singularities at once, when they're on the brink of a patent war. Then his screen became static, as if his emotions were clouded and uncertain. This happened as he asked who the mastermind behind this was, as in the pockets that they were trying to fill. Nemo, Argalia isn't in this for the money. Pluto shook his head at this, while Argalia laughed at this unconvincingly, wondering what his speech device would deliver to him, making fun of what came out of his rectangular noggin. Argalia wasn't interested in such trivial matters, such as singularities or even a patent war. It was so disastrously unfunny that if it was a comedy movie, it would receive the Golden Raspberry Award, or Razzie, for Worst Comedy Movie. Nemo was raising his voice over the pettiest things, as if the life of Boxy Buck depended on something so puny that Rhombus Brain thought that they were making some bread. Don't you mean dough, as in money? That's probably a flaw in the translation. Regardless, this blend of Ra's al Ghul and the Joker considered this to be idiotic. This made Nemo explode with fury at the insults coming his way. Argalia wasn't interested in the views of Mr. Monitor. He told him to think what he wanted. He just expected him to keep his promises. Pluto then had them take a look at the contracts that were signed, which basically said that they'd provide Kane Office with information on W Corp's singularity in exchange for the Kane Office securing the books from the library when they wanted them. The contract was signed by all of those involved, involving Nemo, Martina, and Bada, and also including Argalia, who was the leader of the ensemble. Bada argued that the contract didn't mention that they had to acquire the books on W Corp's singularity themselves. Yeah, the terms were in a rather ambiguous vocabulary, not that it reduced the appropriateness of the contents. Martina didn't believe that they were the ones to decide that. Argalia mentioned that Q-Boy took the pen and hastily signed the contract without thinking about anything beyond the profit margins of the patent war, requiring intel on singularities. Again, Bada didn't see anything in the contract that specified that Kane office had to go in there. Pluto then pointed them at the terms of the contract and told them to look at them more carefully. Martina didn't see anything of note. Pluto let her borrow his eyeglass to look at the fine print, which specifically said, all those who sign this contract must retrieve books at the library. This irritated Bada. This deception at meddling with their business and getting away with it, seeing the contract as fraudulent, asking why they should abide with it. Pluto hinted that it's a stupid decision. Argalia told them that it's no ordinary contract. It was yesterday's promise, as in what Pluto called himself. Argalia mentioned that if they don't fulfill the conditions of that contract, he can take anything out of those who signed it. As much as they wanted, whenever they wanted. Oh, me. Did you think of checking the contract before signing it? You lot should know better than most. Pluto demonstrated the power of the contract by removing Bada's heart out of his body, much to the agonizing pain of Bada, the worry of Martina, and the anger of Nemo. It was heavily augmented, which cost Bada quite a fortune. This was to demonstrate that the two were serious about this. Pluto then returned Bada's heart to him. Argalia wanted to demonstrate to all Oblong that he doesn't give a about what he thinks. He just expects Nemo to keep his side of the bargain. T-Corp even gave the Kane office the same order, so they need to go to the library anyway. Anger would spare them into going. This made Nemo ask, what is Argalia plotting with demons like that? Apparently it's to perform the beauty of humanity and that world, to break down the boundaries of loneliness they all have. Also, according to Pluto, they need to go into the library and retrieve those books by that day. After Argalia and Pluto left, Nemo ridiculed Argalia's talk about beauty and loneliness, calling him a brain-sick loony. Nemo, you're being kind compared to what some would call him. Martina asked about Bada's heart, if it's okay, suggesting that they see a doctor. And by this point, Bada noticed that the color fixer and his distortion were gone. Martina was asking Nemo what they were going to do. Nemo noted that they've been had, but upon being asked by Bada about that, they'd have to go in underprepared. Nemo was even optimistic about that. Hopelessly so. Upon watching this, Angela recognized Pluto. Roland remembered what he was called. Yesterday's promise. As for where Angela recognized him, it was through one of the guest books, like Ruina's, as she was investigating him. He utilized an ordinary contract on the surface, with unfavorable terms hidden in the fine print, which can over those unfortunate or foolish enough to sign it. It created the Thousand Needles incident, but the claim wasn't verified. She considered it a manipulative scheme, obscene even. To see it in action. Yeah, you know how up it is when Angela, one who cared more for the results than the process, is calling someone out on that. Roland didn't think that he was the only manipulative guy in the city. And what would you know about that, Roland? Angela agreed, as people used each other all the time. Roland asked if that was a given. Angela didn't see any point in dwelling on it. Yet she didn't see it as fair, even though they're using each other and each is hiding something from the other. But this wasn't implying that she distrusted him. She was just keeping her options open, as too little precautions can be most unwise. It'd bite her in the now that she possibly has one that's flesh and blood. Roland claimed to not have told her any lies. Angela noted that he was keeping things from her, though. He didn't deny this. She was then tired of trying to get information out of him. She told him to go back to sorting books. Roland wanted to know why she didn't ask farther than that. Apparently, according to Angela, it wouldn't be fun to uncover everything about him in that way. Since when was it fun to be around Roland? Well, curiosity is apparently beneficial for maintaining an interpersonal relationship with him. Either that or she's trusting him that much. Upon arrival, Nemo remarked on how they were led by the monsters of Argalia's ensemble, out of the frying pan and into the flame. In this case, the den of monsters known as the library. Oh, come on. Roland isn't that bad. And as for Gebura, you clearly don't know who she was, do you? As for Bainar, I'll let you go on that one. Nemo calls it comedy gold, the joke of the century. You have simple taste, Nemo. Bada has heard that the library is rather gentle. If you mean by comparison to one that could go crush 40 on your hearts, then yes, it is. Nemo wanted them to stop talking. Bada asked if anything was wrong. Well, Nemo wanted to ask what Martina thought of that place. She could smell something faint. Nemo could smell profits, even though he couldn't smell anything with that head, at least according to Bada. Nemo sees the silver lining of that cloud. Really? All I can see is your inevitable doom. Bada asked if he was planning to sell the books. Nemo confirmed that he was, even if it would trash the reputation of their contract office. They would make a huge profit from selling them. No amount of cash seems to be enough for Nemo. Martina noted that much. As for Bada, he went on to say that Nemo spent as much money in one day as it would take the average backstreet dweller to earn simply for a month of food expenses. Never mind anything else. Yeah, Nemo is a greedy and a psychopath who wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice his dignity if it brought him money. He can never have enough money. Different worlds, similar. Thankfully for Martina and Bada, Nemo had never shortchanged his own staff. So he rewards their loyalty as it adds to his bank accounts, largely because they can continue to be loyal to him and make him filthier and richer. Then Angela greeted them. Nemo realized that she was Angela, the director of the library, the so-called pale librarian, who, according to Bada, didn't look pale at all. Nemo warned him to watch his words, as she's a provider of goods and wealth in the future. His attitude changes swiftly, according to Martina. Bada was used to it by now. Angela then decided to usher them in, rather than continue the conversation. Well, suffice to say, all were killed and added to the shelves. Bada, you're now in the same place as your less morally bankrupt brother. After the battle, Angela considered the concept of patent wars and how fiercely they were fought, based on how Nemo talked about it. According to Roland, technology is the most reliable way of making money, whether that be weapons, augmentations, or something more exotic. Patent wars are waged over them, but in reality, no one truly wins. It's a Pyrrhic victory at best, much like the Head's attempt to shut Ain down, or the fight for the light between Angela and those loyal to Malkuth. Those caught in this patent war, they have to respond well to the patent dispute or lose all rights to the technology by whoever previously didn't have the rights to them. Either that or too much time and energy was expended for the win to be worth it. In the end, the only true winners are those that are somewhere in the middle, making money from both sides, while largely keeping out of the fighting. Basically, if the trouble isn't yours, it's entertainment. Roland has heard a lot of stories about that. Angela believed that it could wait, as they sounded lengthy. She then asked if Arcorb had participated in a patent war. Roland didn't know for sure. He knows that they're exceptional among private military contractors. Angela then asked if Arcorp had tried to get the singularity of another wing. Roland believed that every wing thought the same way about this. Few wings use their singularity on its own. The warp train is proof of that. They utilized the time-leeching tech of T-Corp to make sure that the passengers didn't die of dehydration or anything else while in operation. R-Corp was using W-Corp teleportation technology to enter the facility. L-Corp was using T-Corp tech to speed up the day. R-Corp was used to deal with the more dangerous situations, and K-Corp for the medical nanotech. Regardless, each wing needs to pay a fee whenever they use a singularity that isn't theirs. Angela asked if they uncovered the secrets of those singularities owned by other wings, they could save the expense. Roland confirmed this to be true. It's why they guarded their secrets well. On a side note, I suspect that Nemo had insurance that allowed for at least a partial body replacement, if not a full body replacement, to be covered. And he likely cashed in on this after, well, possibly a negotiation became violent and he came out of it worst. Likely taking out an insurance plan for fixers with an insurance company like Mirai Insurance. Yeah, bureaucracy can be a pain even in that world. Although in his case, the claim was legitimate. Not all of them are. There is still insurance fraud in that world. I suspected that Nemo would rather not have had a body replacement if he could help it. Either that or he might not have been aware of the cloning insurance that Pamela took out. Yeah, you know, the wedge office fixer? Yeah. Sorry, this is the only place I could think of that this would fit. What's coming next? Well, it's time for some literature to be covered, if you know what I mean. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!